Meghan Markle has debuted a new assistant, and not only that, the Duchess Dictator has arrived.
The crown has spoken, and this time there is no walking it back. In an extraordinary sequence of events that has sent shockwaves through Buckingham Palace, Montecito, and every royal correspondent's newsroom from London to Los Angeles, Princess Anne has done something the monarchy almost never does. She has drawn a line in the sand, a hard institutional constitutional line, and that line has Lilibet's name written across it. Meghan Markle's world, the carefully curated empire of candles, wellness campaigns, and as-ever branding, is now in freefall because the royal family is no longer watching from a distance. They are acting, and they have made it abundantly, unmistakably clear Lilibet's future is no longer solely in Meghan's hands. So here is the question you need to ask yourself right now, before we go any further. How far is too far when it comes to a child's public image? And at what point does a mother's ambition cross into something the rest of the world, including a 1,000-year-old monarchy, simply cannot ignore? Stay with us, because what has unfolded in just the last 3 weeks is more dramatic, more legally explosive, and more emotionally raw than anything we have seen from the House of Windsor in decades. This is not tabloid gossip. This is documented. This is time-stamped. And this is escalating by the hour. The meeting that changed everything. Let's go back to the 23rd of January, 2026. Behind the gilded walls of Buckingham Palace, something unprecedented was happening. A crisis meeting, not a routine briefing, not a ceremonial gathering, but a full emergency session had been called. And the people in that room tell you everything about how serious this had become. Princess Anne chairing the session, King Charles III present in person, Prince William, Duchess Sophie, the royal family's principal legal advisors, and here is the detail that should stop you in your tracks. An external representative from the UK's Department for Children and Families. Think about that for a moment. When child welfare officials from a government department are brought inside Buckingham Palace to discuss a royal family matter, you are no longer in the territory of a domestic dispute. You're in the territory of institutional intervention. The session lasted over 3 hours. 3 hours. And by all accounts, what emerged from that room was the most sweeping child protection directive the monarchy has issued in more than 20 years. Why? Because internal legal reports, submitted by Prince Harry's own UK counsel, had reached royal authorities, and they contained what insiders describe as serious alarms about the welfare of 2 children living in California, 2 children named Archie and Lilibet. The very next morning, on the 24th of January 2026, Clarence House released a statement, and this was not a soft, diplomatic, carefully worded piece of royal PR. This was a declaration. It read, in part, "The royal household expresses grave concern regarding the physical, emotional, and educational welfare of Master Archie and Lady Lilibet. Any attempts to commodify or divide the siblings for financial or image purposes are expressly condemned and run contrary to all royal ethical and constitutional standards." Commodify. That word was chosen deliberately, and Meghan Markle's team knew exactly who it was aimed at. Now, before we go any further, drop a comment below and tell us, do you think the royal family has the right to intervene in how Meghan raises her children in America? This question is at the very heart of everything that follows. The Lilibet logs, what they found. Here is where the story takes a turn that is difficult to hear, especially for anyone who believes in letting children be children. Princess Anne's advisory team compiled what insiders have been calling, in private palace circles, the Lilibet logs, a detailed, documented account of a 6-year-old child's weekly schedule. And we are not talking about school runs and playdates. According to this internal dossier, this was Lilibet's week, Monday and Wednesday, filming short-form content for the As Ever brand. Thursday, voice training for a potential audiobook narration. Friday, Mommy and Me product shoots for 2 upcoming wellness campaigns. And, on the weekends, brand-related activities including live streams, unboxing toy demonstrations, and virtual meet and greets via private platforms. Let that sink in. This is a 6-year-old. She does not yet have all her adult teeth. She is at an age where most developmental psychologists agree that unstructured play is not just important, it is neurologically critical. And she was logging brand shoots, voice training, and virtual meet and greets on her weekends. But the numbers don't lie. According to documentation submitted by Prince Harry's lawyers,
I've been asked to read out a statement on behalf of the Duke of Sussex, flagship title for Rupert Murdoch.
Lilibet had logged over 192 recorded work hours between October 1st and December 31st of 2025. That is the equivalent, explicitly cited in the filing, of 6 adult work weeks in a single quarter for a child who had just turned 6. Prince William's response, delivered during a closed-door roundtable on January 30th, was not measured. It was not diplomatic. It was raw. She's 6 years old and already more exhausted than most working women in their 30s. This is not childhood. This is exploitation. Those words, from a future king, are now on record. And then there were the contractor accounts. Multiple former workers connected to the As Ever brand, speaking anonymously to palace investigators, described scenes that are uncomfortable to visualize. One said that Lilibet cried quietly for over 15 minutes after forgetting a scripted line, only to be told by Meghan's personal assistant that she needs to learn resilience. Another described an incident where Meghan, reportedly frustrated by a filming delay, raised her voice at Lilibet and said, "If you want to build something in this world, you have to show up every time, no exceptions." She was speaking to a child who was 6 years old. Meghan's team has dismissed these accounts as misquoted and embellished, but the palace was not relying on contractor gossip. They had the documentation, the contracts, the schedules, and they had, perhaps most devastatingly of all, the words of Lilibet herself. The line that cracked the room open. We need to pause here, because what we're about to share is the moment that, by all accounts from royal insiders, changed the temperature inside every palace briefing room where it was read aloud. In late December 2025, a third-party child psychologist retained by Prince Harry's legal team,
sources close to Harry, his moment in the witness box, confrontation at the High Court,
held 2 confidential video sessions with Lilibet. The child's statements were not legally binding, but what she said was so clear, so simple, and so heartbreaking that when it was read during an emergency briefing at Windsor on January 13th, it stopped the room cold. Lilibet said, "I want to go where I don't have to smile every time. I want to be with Archie." One royal family source described it this way: it was not just a daughter asking for her brother, it was a child rejecting performance as identity. A 6-year-old girl, not asking for a toy, not asking for candy, asking, with devastating emotional clarity, to go somewhere she doesn't have to perform, to be with her brother. And that brings us to the other child in this story, the one who has largely disappeared from view, the one whose absence Duchess Sophie reportedly described in a private royal session as a silence that screams. Where is Archie? This is the question that has haunted senior members of the royal family for over a year, and it is a question the world has not been asking loudly enough. Archie Harrison, 7 years old, has not appeared in any public or private royal channels.
This child kept royal watchers guessing Archie Harrison, perhaps unusual for royals,
for over 14 months, not in media, not in family imagery, nowhere. And this disappearance runs in direct, disturbing contrast to his sister's near-constant visibility. Lilibet has been featured in promotional content, brand campaigns, product shoots. Archie has been gone. According to internal family reports, school attendance records from an unnamed Los Angeles elementary institution have indicated sporadic presence and emotional withdrawal. Prince Harry's own confidential notes describe his son as exhibiting anxious responses when cameras or filming equipment are present. The boy has developed what can only be described as an aversion to being photographed. Think about that. A 7-year-old boy, the son of a prince, the grandson of a king, and he has become afraid of cameras. Duchess Sophie, during that January 29th royal strategy session at Kensington Palace, reportedly gave an address that left the room in silence. She said, "The absence of Archie is a silence that screams. We must ensure he is not emotionally orphaned while both parents are in public war." She also reportedly expressed concern over what she had heard, that Archie rarely engages with peers, that he has shown withdrawn and flat behavior around others, and that when filming equipment enters the home, he becomes visibly shaken. Harry's own accounts confirm it. His son, during brand shoot sessions featuring Lilibet, becomes emotionally withdrawn. The uncomfortable truth the palace is now grappling with openly: one child is being overexposed. One child is being made invisible. And both, in completely different ways, appear to be suffering. So we have to ask you again, do you believe Meghan is aware of the impact this situation is having on both children? Tell us in the comments, because the answer to that question shapes everything about what comes next. Princess Anne draws the line. Now here is where Princess Anne steps fully into the center of this story. And when Princess Anne steps into the center of something, you pay attention, because this is a woman who does not perform. She does not posture. She acts. On January 27th, Princess Anne formally requested that Prince Harry submit what is being called a Royal Child Protection Briefing, a detailed framework explaining how he intends to safeguard the physical, emotional, and educational integrity of both children in the United States. On January 28th, Meghan Markle received a formal legal notice requiring her to respond to a royal conduct inquiry. This letter demanded a written justification for her decision to remove Lilibet from her accredited school, Brentwood Academy, and pursue full homeschooling, especially following a formal concern notice issued by the school in December 2025. It also demanded her written explanation for rejecting psychological oversight previously offered by Brentwood's child welfare advisors. And on January 31st, in a move described as rarely used but constitutionally permissible, Clarence House, through UK health liaison channels, filed an official request with California state medical boards to procure a full psychological and health wellness report for both Archie and Lilibet. This falls under what is known as the sovereign protection rights extended to royal descendants residing abroad.
This whole thing is not just for Harry. He also claims he can't bring his family over, Ravik or the royal household or the king.
In other words, the British Crown reached across the Atlantic Ocean and formally requested access to the health records of 2 American resident children because those children carry royal blood. And the palace believes that blood creates a duty of protection that does not stop at any border. Meghan has not responded. Her spokesperson described the monarchy's tone as patronizing and intrusive. But here is the thing, and this is critical. The palace was not making suggestions. They were issuing institutional directives backed by documented evidence and legal frameworks that predate Meghan Markle's existence by several hundred years. Brentwood Academy and the 10 contracts. Let us talk about Brentwood Academy, because this piece of the puzzle is one Meghan has been very careful to keep out of the public conversation. Lilibet was enrolled at Brentwood Academy in Los Angeles. In early December 2025, Meghan pulled her from the school. The stated reason was disagreements about curriculum freedom and media restrictions. But on the 10th of December 2025, Brentwood issued a formal absence report, not just noting the absence, but flagging that social development markers were not being met at expected levels. When Harry's legal team filed their court documents, the Brentwood letter was included as evidence. It cited severe absenteeism, an inability to confirm learning milestones, and serious concerns over Lilibet's emotional self-regulation. It concluded with a recommendation that Lilibet undergo a full developmental assessment if homeschooling continued. And then there are the contracts. Palace sources confirm that over 10 contracts involving Lilibet, spanning fashion, skincare, scripted video content, and educational toy lines, are currently under investigation. 10 contracts for a child who cannot legally sign anything herself. When Meghan was asked during her January 28th press conference whether Lilibet was working more than 15 hours per week on branded content, she paused, then said, "She's not working, she's creating. There's a difference." The palace saw no such nuance, and additional pressure mounted when California's Child and Family Services received an anonymous report believed to have come from a former Archwell contractor.
Archwell and Prince Harry and Meghan Markle when they were still working royals. This one, their longest-serving head of Archwell.
Regarding excessive media involvement and an atypical daily structure for a child under 10. As of late January, no formal case had been opened, but the department was monitoring public developments with, in one report's words, elevated interest. Harry goes to court, the custody bombshell. Now we arrive at perhaps the most seismic development in this entire saga. The move nobody saw coming, the filing that caught Meghan's legal team completely off guard. On the 2nd of January 2026, Prince Harry filed an official custody request with the Los Angeles Superior Court.
How are you feeling confident?
Harry is due to testify later this week, a rarity to see a royal in court.
Seeking full legal and physical custody of both Archie and Lilibet. This was not a symbolic gesture. This was not a negotiating tactic. This was a formal legal action, filed in an American court by a British prince, without Meghan's prior knowledge or consent. Harry's filing included a line that has since become one of the most quoted phrases in this entire saga. The emotional bifurcation of siblings is not a solution. It is institutionalized trauma. Meghan's team scrambled. On January 6th, they filed a counter-motion, proposing a split custody framework. Archie would spend 9 months per year with Harry in the UK, 3 months in the US. Lilibet would remain full-time in California, citing educational, therapeutic, and career systems already in place that could not be replicated abroad. Career systems for a 6-year-old in a custody filing. Royal insiders say that when Princess Anne and Prince William reviewed that counter-filing, they viewed it as a red flag so significant it was impossible to ignore. The framing of a first grader as having career infrastructure, requiring legal protection in a custody arrangement is, by any reasonable standard, a remarkable thing to put in court documents. And so the palace's response hardened further, the institutional machinery accelerated, and Princess Anne's newly formed Royal Child Preservation Council stepped into full operational mode. The Royal Child Preservation Council. Announced internally on the 1st of February 2026, the Royal Child Preservation Council is being described by sources inside Kensington Palace as the most active non-political royal body since the Diana Crisis Committee of 1997. That comparison alone tells you everything about how seriously this is being taken. Led by Princess Anne and reporting directly to King Charles III, the RCPC includes senior officials from the Royal Legal Advisory Board, 2 independent pediatric psychologists, a cross-national liaison from the UK's Department for Children and Families, and an international diplomatic representative specializing in transatlantic custody and citizenship law. Its charter mission: to preserve the private development and emotional stability of royal descendants abroad in circumstances of image overexposure, household fragmentation, or branding-based activity inconsistent with minor wellness. This is not a committee formed to write a report and shelve it. This is a body with teeth. And behind the scenes, royal aides have begun preparing a contingency strategy involving the UK Foreign Office and the British Consulate in Los Angeles. Should Meghan continue resisting inquiries, the monarchy may formally request legal cooperation with local child welfare bodies, visibility into medical and educational reports under diplomatic consent, and, in emergency cases, temporary physical oversight of the children. King Charles has not yet signed that directive, but the draft exists. One senior Crown advisor summarized the position plainly. This isn't about reclaiming children or challenging maternal authority. It's about preventing a reputational and emotional implosion. If Lilibet becomes a cautionary tale, the monarchy's moral legitimacy goes with it. Meghan fires back and reveals more than she intended. On January 28th, Meghan held a virtual press conference via Zoom. Composed, seated in front of soft-lit shelves with copies of The Bench arranged behind her, deliberately staged, carefully controlled. Her central message: Lilibet is not being exploited. She's being empowered. She has gifts, and I will not apologize for cultivating them. She called Harry regressive and obstructive. She defended pulling Lilibet from school as protective, nurturing, and responsive to her emotional intelligence. She framed herself as a visionary modern mother misunderstood by a backward institution. But then she said something that was meant to generate sympathy, and instead generated something else entirely. She spoke about her own childhood, a one-bedroom apartment with her mother, second-hand textbooks, classmates with legacy surnames who always seemed to leap ahead. She described Lilibet as her second chance at getting it right. That phrase, second chance, is the one that echoed longest in palace briefing rooms, because it reframes Lilibet not as a child with her own future, but as a vessel for Meghan's unfinished personal story. As one palace insider put it with devastating simplicity, you don't heal your own childhood by hijacking your child's future. Now there is word of a new trademark application. Meghan is reportedly pushing to register the phrase "raised by purpose" under Lilibet's name. If filed, the palace has signaled it may trigger a formal objection under UK soft diplomacy agreements and media ethics oversight. Raised by purpose as a commercial trademark for a 6-year-old who told a psychologist she just wants to stop smiling on command. Catherine enters, the quiet force. Not everything happening in this story is confrontational, and in fact, the most consequential development of the past 2 weeks may be the one receiving the least coverage. Princess Catherine has quietly positioned herself as the one person in this entire conflict who might actually prevent it from becoming something irreversible. According to insiders at Kensington Palace, Catherine has spent weeks building the framework for what is being internally called the Windsor Reset, a discreet in-person family summit at Windsor Castle, proposed for the 9th to 11th of February 2026. The attendees, Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, Princess Anne, Prince William, and Catherine herself as moderator. No press, no recording, no staff, no lawyers in the room. Just a conversation about 2 children.
Therefore, not simply just about how we raise our children.
The palace has reportedly booked a secure wing at Windsor Castle for those dates. Invitations were hand-delivered via private diplomatic courier to Harry and Meghan's legal teams on February 2nd. Harry is said to be open and hopeful. Meghan's camp has given no formal response, but Catherine has not waited. On January 29th, she sent Meghan a handwritten personal letter. The content has not been released publicly, but senior aides confirmed its tone was disarmingly honest, non-accusatory, and anchored in shared motherhood. One excerpt verified through a trusted palace source. Whatever divides us, I believe we both want them to feel loved before they feel watched. I hope we can still agree on that. A future queen, writing by hand. To the woman who has publicly criticized her family, her institution, and her country. Choosing motherhood over monarchy as common ground. That is not weakness. That is the most sophisticated move in this entire saga. Operation Veil, the 2 paths. Inside the palace, communications teams are preparing for every outcome. The dual contingency plan is called Operation Veil. It has 2 paths. Path A, Meghan attends the Windsor Summit. The summit succeeds. The palace releases a unified statement on shared family values and commitment to child well-being. The crisis de-escalates. The RCPC monitors quietly from behind the scenes. Path B, Meghan refuses, or she undermines proceedings. Through a tell-all interview, a Netflix documentary,
The Sussex kids make some cute cameos in Netflix's Harry and Meghan.
or escalating legal action. In that case, official clarification that Lilibet's use of royal symbols is unauthorized, full public endorsement of Harry's custody petition, and activation of a joint interview, possibly led by Catherine and Anne, to reclaim the narrative without explicitly vilifying Meghan, but making the monarchy's institutional ethics unmistakable. And there is one more layer to Path B. Insiders confirmed the palace is examining whether Meghan has been using Windsor symbols commercially without authorization. Royal coats of arms subtly embedded in as-ever designs. Phrases like "of royal lineage" and fonts and crests associated with the Royal Collection Trust. If those findings are confirmed and Meghan does not comply, the palace may issue a full revocation notice. Lilibet would retain her bloodline status, but every royal visual identifier attached to commercial products would be stripped. As one insider described it, a thunderous signal that lineage does not entitle license, especially when used to market candles, skin cream, or lifestyle retreats. What hangs in the balance? So here we are, February 2026. The Windsor summit is days away. Meghan has not confirmed. Harry is waiting. Anne is ready. Catherine has written her letter. Charles is watching. And 2 children, a 7-year-old boy who flinches when cameras enter a room, and a 6-year-old girl who told a psychologist she just wants to stop smiling on command,
Prince Harry and Meghan Markle share never-before-seen photos of their kids Archie and Lily.
are at the center of everything. Princess Anne has stated, with the full institutional authority of the British monarchy behind her, that Lilibet's future is not a commercial asset, not a brand, not a platform. The decision about what that future looks like will not be made unilaterally by any parent operating outside the legal and ethical frameworks that govern both royal family obligations and the fundamental welfare of children. The Crown's position is now locked in, immovable. The question is no longer whether the palace will act. The question is whether Meghan will engage before they are forced to act in ways she will not be able to reverse. As one senior official summarized it, "We will not negotiate the well-being of children. We will act if no one else will." King Charles, a man who has lived through the most painful chapters in modern royal history, the collapse of his own marriage, the unraveling of Diana's public life, the cost of failing to protect children from an institution's machinery, appears to have made a quiet, deliberate, irreversible decision. He will not let it happen again. Princess Anne said it best during that January 30th internal address. "We must protect children not from ambition, but from premature purpose." And Catherine, as always, said it most humanly of all. "Whatever divides us, I believe we both want them to feel loved before they feel watched." The question, the only question that matters now, is whether Meghan agrees. So we're asking you one final time, what do you think she will do? Will she walk into Windsor Castle and sit at that table? Or will she escalate? Does she see Lilibet as a child or as a continuation of her own story? Drop it in the comments, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure you subscribe, because this story is far from over. The next chapter arrives within days. The Crown is awake, it is watching, and it is not blinking.